Hello, this is Crenstar, and I want to do some voice stacking experiments. I really don't. I understand the concept of voice stacking, but in reality, using it and I have some misconceptions of it, so I want to clear those. I have presently a spectrum analyzer because I think with voice stacking, I have a pretty simple setup here. I got a sine wave that goes to an envelope that goes to a note out, and what I want to do is I want to kind of give me a visualization of what's happening with voice stacking, because you can tell me that it does things, but unless either I hear it or I see it, I don't really know what's going on. So I'm going to use this spectrum analyzer to kind of help illustrate what's going on with voice stacking. What voice stacking is it takes the note grid or whatever grid and it multiplies it for how many voices that you got. So you have this little voice stacking parameter here, and that's what we're talking about, is this voice stacking. There's also an alternate voice stacking modulator that if there are multiple voices that are going in, there's the voice control, I believe, here, and then there's the stack spread that's here that controls the stacking. And I've played with it a little, but we are primarily, or I am primarily focused on the grid and how it applies to the grid. So when I press a note, we have a single note on here on the thing, and we have a single sound. Now, if I turn voice stacking on and do, let's just do a C. Now let's turn it off. You can barely tell the amplitude actually increases or the volume increases because there are multiple voices playing, and when you play the same voice, it multiplies the amplitude. So that effect goes on there. So how can we tell with the spectrum analyzer that there are multiple versions of this grid going? There's this voice stack spread here, and we can actually increase the semitones. Now we only have two, so what happens if we do 3, 4, 5? We actually see what happens. That the rise in the peaks up here is applied to the semitones. We are messing around with the stack spread modulator here in the grid and applying it to the semitones so that therefore every semitone goes up a certain amount based upon whatever the stack is. So if we have 4, it goes up 4. So it should have literally registering 4 different semitones across there. And down here it shows how many voices that we're playing. And that's just one note I'm playing. So what happens if I play multiple notes? It plays 15 because it multiplies 5 per every one of my notes. So if we go back down to off, and it creates 2 different things. That's really good for voices and creating stuff that's normally meant for the polygrid rather than the note grid. I have it in the note grid for a reason, because I want to mess with how this applies to the notes that are coming out. And this is the second experiment I have, because I had a video a little while ago on using the stack spread, and I totally missed this setting right here. I was using the modulator for making it happen instead of the stack spread here, which would have been natural. So what I want to kind of do is we're going to take away the note grid spectrum analyzer, because we can see it does indeed send out multiple voices depending on the stack. Now what I want to do is I want to see if it'll put out multiple notes based upon the stack. So I'm going to stop it, and then next we're going to set up basically another lane, and we're going to record from this one where it has a note grid onto there, and we're going to take off this one so that I can see the MIDI and not get hindered by it. So we're going to go to here. So what I did is I recorded a very simple one note kind of melody here, and I want to record it onto this separate instance. And what I want to do is I want to turn these one notes into chords, and I'm going to try using voice stacking in the grid to accomplish that. So when I hit record, I'm going to have this on record here, and then it's going it's going to mimic what I have above it because I have this routed into this, and that makes total sense. So it's a one-to-one copy, but that's not what we're going for. What we want to go for is we want to go back into the grid and mess with voice stacking here. So what we could do is we can real easily change the voice on here, or the voice amount, and then go back to here, grab it, and then let's move up the amount that we're going to apply to it. So now when we go out, doesn't change the pitch, and it doesn't duplicate it. So is it applying the voice stacking on the chord here? It says it is for the pitch. I'm going to turn off the sound here for a bit because it's going to get really annoying here really fast. It's going to get annoying. So I'm just curious about the display and then what it's doing on the MIDI at this point. The chord's playing. So in this grid, there should be 3 different copies of it, 1 per note that's coming through as far as I know. And the reason why I say that is that you can go in here and do the value readout, move it down to here, and then move it to semitone, and you can see when it comes through, there's a D3 playing. There's a couple of chords playing, but it's only showing one chord of the set. So we have an A sharp and an F2 and a A2. But when we go into the grid and play, and in here, it just shows the A2. So it's definitely only displaying one. What I'm doing here is I want to see if I can use the polyphony or the multiple notes that are going on to see if I can get it to display different values depending on the inputs here, and see if I can get it to display in one grid what we're doing on the outside. So if I have 3 notes coming in, I am thinking maybe I see 2 different values instead of 1. So I want to see the A2 here and maybe the F or the C sharp. Nope, they're both the same one. And this one, I have the modulator for the note grid set with primes. I want to see how this kind of affects things. So I keep an eye on here. I have this set to the value here, and then when this goes up and how this is set up, so I have it on primes right now. This is going to read out a value to see where it's at. And this is kind of interesting because of the behavior of this. So when I play it, it goes up to 50%. I have 2. But if I go 3, it goes up 33. And then 2.2. And 0.5. So it moves the value based upon the voice stacking amount. And you can, let's see, I'm going to set the 5 to 100% and see what happens. That's interesting. It looks like the display... That's interesting. It looks like the display takes on the last value of the voice stack because nothing else is changing, but when I move this one up, it changes along with the voice stack. So number 5 it changes with. So if I go down to 3, 4, 2, and then once again... go back on here and then change it, it changes with the last value. But if I turn voice stacking off here, it looks like the modulator here is dependent on the actual setting of the grid and not anything before it coming in. The grid kind of multiplies itself, and we've proved that with the earlier experiments or the first couple of experiments with the pitch. It doesn't really change itself when it comes to visualization. Let's try one more experiment. So we have a hard set MIDI here that we're going to send out, and it should be just sending a C3 pitch out to the end. What happens if we change the stack amount? Actually, not the stack, but the stack spread there. Technically, in my mind, I would think it would change it 3 different times, 1 for each of them. And then hopefully that will send out to the one external what it's doing out here where we have it. So let's test it and see. That works. It doesn't follow the note that's coming in. That's okay. So it's theoretically moving the pitch up 3 different places and then sending out to the MIDI. So while altering this doesn't work, this does. So if we want to mess with the incoming pitch, actually, I would be dumb not to think about this. It would be the transpose. We have an incoming, we have it going into there to replicate it, and then we use our stack to mess with the amount. Let's see how it records. And now it's creating chords based upon your original incoming selection, note selection that you had. So it turns well, these are tripling because we've already had chords in here. So let's try this one more time. So using stack spread, you were able to create sort of your own kind of cool looking chords. Realistically, you want to mess with the ratios a little bit on the settings in here, but it looks like it's transposing the notes according to what your stack is, allowing you to make your own chord creator. I think if I want three notes in my chord, I just do it for 3 voice stacks. So let's kill that. Go back over here. Yes. But it follows the root note that it has, either above or below where the root note is. So realistically, I think my root note is originally up here. Let's look at my root note. My root note here is an A. So up here we have an A sharp or a C sharp. We have our original root note is an A, and then and root is a weird word context because usually you would call this one root. But since our input note is an A2, I was calling it a root. But realistically, let's just say our input note. Our input notes are the ones in the middle that do it, and then we got notes below and above it because of the stack spread to allow us to create the additional note. But it's a cool way to create additional harmonies using the note grid to actually do cool things. The note grid is really cool on Bitwig. I think the integration of it into like a DAW makes it even more powerful than, let's say, using an external VST source like Reactor or VCV Rack. I think it has a lot of possibilities, or adds a lot of possibilities to the things that you want to do, and it honestly turns Bitwig more into an instrument on itself, normally for live play or for messing around and creating new and different MIDI sequences. I'm going to go crazy and I'm going to use a sine mod and see how that affects our note. All right, let's try it and see how much our notes go crazy. Actually, a lot more crazy. Our original input note up here was an A2. This shot it all the way up to the C8. And I see a C sharp note and I see E note, but I don't see our A2 anywhere. So it totally changed it. So you got entirely new MIDI based upon the stack spread and be able to do it. Thanks if you're watching, or if you're still here, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. And joining me in my experimentations with trying to understand how stacks work and affects the grid, the note grid primarily, and how it works, and looking at the behavior of the stack spread from a more scientific or more experimental way. I hope you liked the video, and I will see you later.